everyone, today I'm going to read chapter 2 of Rubbish Town Hero. Now I'm trying to film with my special guest. This is Poppy and down here this is Parker. I don't know if they'll stay for the whole chapter, but we'll see. Okay, so chapter 2 of Rubbish Town Hero. Rubbish Town was a town made of rubbish. Houses made of flattened out tins or cardboard or strips of plastic bags stuck together. Everything and everybody in Rubbish Town had been thrown away at least once. At one end of town was the old dump and the other was the new dump. Trucks full of new rubbish arrived at the new dump all the time, day and night. New rubbish was a treasure trove. It contained all manner of riches: food, clothes, fridges, cookers, DVDs, toys, bikes, everything. Cheapo dreamed of being allowed to search through a big, smelly, sticky load of it. But the gates to the new dump were guarded by men with guns. You had to know the right people to work on the new dump and be big and tough enough to fight for anything you found. Papa Voodoo had worked on the new dump when he was a young man. His nose was crooked and his cheeks were scarred, showing how hard he'd once fought for his place at the very front where the rubbish tipped fresh and full of promise off the back of lorries. Now he stuck to the old dump, and his wife and 2 eldest sons took his old spot on the new dump, where the freshest trash was unloaded. The story was that Voodoo had won the old dump in a fight. He'd mended all the fences so that no one but him and his gangs of sharp-eyed boys could get in there to find metal, wood and plastic to sell for good money. "She's slow and steady, that old dump," Voodoo told everyone. "Just right for a slow old guy like me." But everyone knew Papa Voodoo was still a fighter, as sly as a jackal and as dangerous as a scorpion. No one really believed that slow and steady was enough for him. Voodoo had other, bigger plans for the dump for sure, but nobody could say exactly what. Whatever they were, everyone knew Awiti wasn't pleased about them. Awiti was always grumbling about the old dump and how he wanted to work on the new dump with his big brothers, but Voodoo said he wasn't allowed until he'd learned his trade. So all day Awiti took his bad temper out on the boys in Voodoo's search gangs, kicking and slapping them, all much smaller than him, for the slightest thing. Voodoo knew about it, but perhaps he thought that kicking people smaller than you was part of Awiti's training. The only real difference between father and son was that Voodoo was a bully who smiled and Awiti wasn't. Papa Voodoo had a lot to smile about. It was clear from his round tummy that he never went hungry, and his house was one of the grandest in Rubbish Town. Only the bosses of the new dump had homes with more rooms. Cheapo looked at Voodoo's house with a kind of awe and told himself that one day he would build one just like it. 2 rooms, each with a tin roof, a lean-to kitchen on the side, and 3 different saucepans with something cooking in all of them. Papa Voodoo's house had a generator that ran electric lights, and most wonderful for Cheapo and the other boys, a TV. Sometimes at the end of the day, if Voodoo was in an especially good mood, he'd let the boys watch it. Cartoons were Cheapo's favourite. He rolled around on the floor laughing when Jerry Mouse defeated Tomcat again. He dreamed of being a superhero, Spider-Man or Batman, perhaps, or his favourite, Powerbolt. Powerbolt was a superhero who could fly without wings and was so strong he could lift elephants and stop a truck with one hand. He was always saving people from danger. In one episode that Cheapo always loved, which was on TV time after time, Powerbolt saved the whole of Africa from a plague of giant monsters called dinosaurs. Just thinking about it made Cheapo feel bigger and stronger. But tonight, the generator wasn't working. The TV was dead, and Voodoo sat behind his big table in the light of a kerosene lamp. A spring balance dangled from the beam above to weigh whatever plastic, wood or metal the boys had found. Voodoo recorded each boy's tally and paid him for it at the end of the month when the big bales of plastic, wood and metal were sold. But no one ever got even half of what they were owed. Smiling his big smile, Voodoo kept most of the money for himself. So although Cheapo only used his pay to buy dried beans or bags of rice, well before the end of the month, it always ran out. Now, still a week away from payday, Cheapo was glad that Fudu also paid his boys in food that his family had never found in the new dump. But to get the best of it, you had to please Papa Fudu. As usual, the food pay was piled in a basket beside Fudu's desk. Cheapo took a good look at what he might get today. The best items were 2 sandwiches, still in their packet with just one bite taken out of one and a bit of mould on the other, and an almost full tin of beans. The worst were small, very black banana and 4 biscuits with splodges of what might have been oil but could have been something much worse. "Okay, boys," said Fudu, "time to show me what you've got." The boys lined up, silently shoving and jostling each other for position. Cheapo usually went close to the back. That way, by the time Cheapo collected his pay, a Wheatie would be eating his dinner or doing chores for his mother, too busy to cause trouble. But Cheapo had a lot to do tonight, so he needed to be first. The other boys knew how hard he could kick, so he got in right at the front of the line. But then at the last moment, little Dee wriggled through in front of him and stepped up to the desk. For a moment, Cheapo felt cross. Then he remembered his unspoken promise to Dee and let him push in without a word. Cheapo noticed that Dee was even skinnier this week than last, so you could count all his ribs. The only bit of him that was thriving was his hair, which stood up on his little head like a brush. He had arrived, as most lone children seem to do, out of nowhere, at the end of the last rainy season, and somehow persuaded Fudu to employ him. He never found much of any value, and Fudu was coming to the end of his patience with him. All the same, Dee stepped forward, hopefully, to show his finds. Papa Fudu's face screwed up like a gathering thundercloud. "I pay for plastic, for metal, for wood," he growled, counting the items off on his fat fingers. "But all you have brought me, again, are pretty pieces of broken pot." Dee was going to get fired. Cheapo just knew it. He decided to do something. He slipped a coil of wire out of his own pack and cleared his throat. "Excuse me," he said. "Papa Fudu, I think Dee dropped this." He put the coil down amongst the pieces of pottery that Dee had collected. Said Papa Fudu. "Copper wire. Very valuable." He looked from Dee to Cheapo and back again. "You're a very lucky boy, Dee." He pointed to the black splodge biscuits. "Take them and I'll add the wire to your tally, but tomorrow is your last chance. Now go." Dee backed away as if he'd been pushed by Fudu's pointed finger. He smiled quickly at Cheapo and raced off. Cheapo stepped forward and emptied his sack onto the desk. 2 bent saucepan lids, about 30 short sections of electrical wire, and 12 flattened plastic bottles, none of which Papa Fudu would pay for him properly for, which made him feel a bit better about planning to keep the TV for himself. "See this, Wheatie," Fudu said, turning to where his son lurked in the shadows by the stove, arms full of firewood. "This is good work. Aluminium in those pan lids, copper in the cable, and we'll add the plastic to your weekly total, Cheapo." He pointed to the food. "You are my best worker, Cheapo. Take the sandwiches." Cheapo felt a Wheatie's eyes glaring at him as he snatched up the triangle-shaped box, but he didn't even bother to look round at the boy. What did a Wheatie matter today, when he, Cheapo, was almost a superhero, with food for supper and a TV to trade? He raced off through the rubbish town crowds and out into the dark beyond. Unlike Dee, Cheapo had someone with whom to share his good news, his sister. And that's the end of chapter 2. I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you for the next chapter. Oh, you like it too, Parker? Bye!